Good morning. I'm going to call the session of the Boardroom revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Our panel is composed of Mr. Brett McIntyre, who's to my left. Farther to my left is Mr. Ron Stanley, and my name is Harvey Diamond. The city is represented by the assessor David Penner, and the lady who makes everything work here is our secretary, Kara Balshaw. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision have been requested are described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor may make at this hearing must be sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to those matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparative assessments of properties are not considered evidence by our board. Our board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence that we hear, and we issue written orders that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that our decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should a party wish to appeal, information on doing so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed to each applicant before following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions. The applicant may have questions as well, and the applicant's testimony will follow, and his testimony will also be followed by questions. Each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence on an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the agenda, and once all the applications have been heard, we will deliberate in private and we'll make our decision known by registered mail, which will be mailed as soon as possible. Please be advised that all public hearings are live streamed, as is this one, and recorded, and will be part of our public record. Will you swear the parties in? Thank you.
Please state your name.
David Thomas George Penner.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Do you swear? Please state your name.
That is better.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the first matter we have on the agenda today is 2520 Portage Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the roll number here is 07-569-070900, 2520 Portage Avenue. Preliminary issue on this assessment is we're requesting a deferral penalty for non-compliance. On page 24 of my brief are the supporting documents for this request. A registered mailer went out. The tracking details are on page 25, and page 26 on is the registered letter that went out requesting the financial information for 2017. We did not receive that information, and therefore we're asking for a deferral penalty and reversal of bonus.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, what do you have to say about that?
I spoke to the owners, and unfortunately, it sounds like the person that was in charge of sending them out was off sick, and they didn't reply.
Okay, so you're not opposing the application?
No, the owners have said that, as far as their records show, they never got sent in. And the lady that signed the card is the receptionist at their Lakewood office.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to just basically ask my panel members any questions that you may have.
Well, the only one I would ask is that happened before,
Not with this company.
because usually they show that with the non-compliance previously, but that's all. It's not a factor anyway, but I just thought I'd ask.
Something opposed, but it's just, if there are any questions?
Yeah, I have no questions.
I don't either. I don't think that we have a difficulty, since you're not opposed to making the recommendation, not the recommendation, but we're going to grant the city its application.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go first?
You go first.
Okay. If I could ask the board to turn to the second page of my brief. It's just a picture. It's the Holiday Inn Airport West, which was previously called the Birchwood Inn. It's on Portage Avenue, close to Moray, I guess it is. The current 2020 assessment is $9,641,000, and I'm requesting a value of $7,819,000. Turn to page 3. This shows the site, the property. The subject property is a 14-story hotel located at 2520 Portage Portage Avenue, there's a total of 226 rooms, plus dining, fitness, banquet facilities, indoor pool, and a lounge. The land area is 2.1 acres in zone C3. There is surface and underground parking at this hotel. If I could just go right to page 5 on the income approach. As the board is aware, the hotels are assessed based on all of the income they receive and all allowable expenses. And then capitalized and business value and furniture, fixtures, and equipment allowances are made. Mr. Penner didn't have the latest income and expense questions, but from pages 7 until 18 are the statements that were for their year ending, which is October 31st, 2017. So if I ask the board to look to page 5A, this is basically our stabilized valuation of the subject property based on the actual income and expense questionnaires. We're stabilizing the rooms. Now, this hotel went under a lot of construction over the, I think it was from 15 to 19. Actually, just a quick explanation. The hotel was becoming, it is older and it was becoming dated, and there was an influx of over 350,000 room nights in 13 and 14. And the owners decided that they better renovate the hotel, bring it up to more current standards to try to maintain their share of the market for Winnipeg. In order to complete the renovations, the hotel started closing off certain floors in the hotel starting in 15. For 2017, the renovations were close to 90% complete, and we have used the actual statements for October 17 for our report. Two areas where the expenses were higher than normal for 2017 were in the rooms department and in the repair and maintenance department. For the rooms, we stabilized at 30%, which is within the guidelines set up by the assessors parameters, and we used 4% for the R&M. Based on that, we came up with a net operating income of $827,868. We capitalized that at 9%, and we took off 15% for FF&E, and we ended up with a market value of $7,819,000. So on 5A, the two areas where we made adjustments to the actual expenses are highlighted in red. So the total sales, and that includes the VLT, the banquets, everything, was $7,868,414. For the rooms, we stabilized at a cost of 30%, which is 30% of the actual room revenue. The food costs and sales beverage were standard. Telephone is always high because even though they supply the telephones, it costs them money to have them there. And then if we go down to underneath general expenses, admin in general, we're at 14.1, which is within the assessor's parameters. Advertising, heat and light are all fair, and then we use 4% for maintenance. Now the property does have a Holiday Inn flag, so we allow for franchise fee of 4.2%, and management of 4% is $314,737. And with hotels, we allow a reserve for replacement for the items that are needed to earn the income but are not accessible, such as beds and TVs. That was 3%. From that, we then remove the cost of insurance, business taxes, and property tax, and that's where we come up with our net operating income of $827,868. On the next page, 5B, we then capitalize that at 9% for a going concern value of $9,198,531. And then from that, we take away another 15% for personal property allowance, and that works out to $1,379,780 for an indicated market value, I should say 2018, of $7,819,000 rounded. And I'm open for questions.
Mr. Penner, any questions of the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of housekeeping issues. Page 2 of your brief, Mr. Bedker, you note a reference date of April 1st, 2016.
Yeah, it looks like I copied and didn't change that.
Understandable
So
there.
it should
And
be 18, and it should be 220 assessment and 2020 recommended assessment.
right, okay. So we're dealing with 2020 and April 1st, 18 assessment. Same on page 5, you note the current 2018 assessment. That should read the current 2020.
Yes, 2020, yes.
Right. Now, you referenced the renovations and the massive construction that went on there. In 2017, was that construction still ongoing?
It was, I think it was between 85 and 95% complete.
So almost complete.
I
So
can't remember, but you and I and Jason inspected the property. I think that was in,
earlier 17, I believe?
yeah, and it was
Yeah.
pretty wide. They just had a couple of rooms to finish on that.
Restaurant as well, I believe.
They had some rooms around the pool,
Mhm.
and I think a few minor to the banquet room.
So I guess my final question is, with their fiscal year ending October 31st, 17, would you say that the hotel is still ramping up from the construction?
I wouldn't say ramping up, I'd say it was pretty well at the end of the construction, because the majority of the rooms, like from 3 up, were all completed. And it was just the banquet rooms, I think they were just doing some painting and changing the flooring.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Sting, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Well, it's a minor one, I guess. This allowance that was here, oh no, never mind. No, I'll leave that. I'll leave it, see what the other side says.
That's
I'm
fine.
fine with that.
What was the cost of the renovations?
I'm not sure, it was quite extensive. I'm not sure, maybe Mr. Penner remembers, I don't.
Well, I'll address that in my presentation, but I believe it's noted around 10 million.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
That's kind of what I was at.
Yeah, it was extensive. They had a choice of either doing that or just losing business. These all the new ones that opened up around the hotel or around the airport were starting to stream away all their business.
Could I, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yep.
This personal property allowance, maybe I should know that, but you've got $1,379,000. That's reduced the NOI. What is that again?
That's for the furnitures, fixtures, and equipment.
It's which?
For furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. Because you're using the room revenue, except, say for example, the room revenue, you can only get that room revenue if you have the beds and the TVs and the linen, which are not assessable items. So they're given a reserve to replace that of 3%, and then they take off 15% at the end to allow for those.
That's standard,
items.
15%?
Well, for this type of hotel, yes. If you get into a beverage or a Galvinage hotel, it's usually about 10%.
Yes, it
Because
is,
it-
it is a standard deduction to remove the non-assessable.
Yeah, no, okay.
It's standard, I
haven't seen that
it's
for a while.
widely accepted.
Okay, no, that's
Yeah,
fine.
like
That's
this,
what it
yeah.
is, that's what it is. Okay.
So 15%, that was gonna be my question. So 15% though basically would be what they would claim on income tax as well for depreciation of the room,
A lot of,
equipment?
it depends. Some of the hotels, depending on which type of hotel and who's running it, will allow 20% on their books. Some will allow 15, some will allow 10.
But as far as the
Yeah.
assessment department, they recognize 15%, so that's what it
Right.
is. Okay.
The only thing we've seen start to change now is the reserve for replacement. Lenders and that are now asking for 4%, because if you don't keep replacing your stuff, you're not gonna be able to maintain your rates.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's my question, thank you. Mr. Penner, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, starting on page 1 of my brief, as mentioned, this is the Holiday Inn on Portage at 2520 Portage Avenue. The license capacity is 912. There are 13 VLTs on site and 228 guest rooms. Turning to page 2 of my brief, again, it shows that we requested info for 2017 and did not receive a response, thus the non-compliance. So page 3 in our brief is a summary table of cap rates. The cap rate chosen here is not in dispute, but it shows that 9% is more than acceptable within the ranges from all parties for an urban full-service hotel such as this. Turning to page 4 and 5 are pertinent excerpts from the MAA. We don't need to go into those right now. On page 6 then is my income workup summary. So as mentioned, we didn't have, in this case, 16 or 17 information to go on. All we had was 2015. But what we were armed with was the knowledge that this hotel was undergoing significant renovations. The rooms were stripped down to the studs and rebuilt. The restaurant, banquet hall, everything was redone. So in our stabilized income workup, we were forced to project a reasonable amount of income from rooms, food and beverage, and other sources. So in that regard, we chose 60% occupancy and $126 average daily rate. The average daily rate, that being in line with what they were receiving in 2015. So we thought that was reasonable to use going forward. And we would assume that they would at least achieve a 60% occupancy rate once renovations were complete. So we projected $6,250,000 for room revenue. When it came time closer to the appeal, we thought, well, could we justify that $6,250,000? Now we have the 2017 information from Mr. Betker, which indicates, I believe, $5,855,000. What we did was we looked at the accommodation tax returns, which are a monthly filing by the hotel, to see what their monthly revenues were being reported. And we see that if we look from April 1st, 17 up to March 31st, 18, which is right up to the reference date, the actual room revenue is $6,311,000. So at $6,250,000, it appears that our projection is pretty spot on with what's actually happened. Same thing with food and beverage. We don't have a means to confirm that revenue right up until the reference date. So we've projected that it should increase from 2015, having been fully renovated and modernized. We would expect that they would do better. So we've heard that construction was nearly complete in 2017, as much as 90% complete. So in our view, the 2017 financials wouldn't reflect a full year of how the hotel would operate with the renovations completed. And we believe that our projections were fairly reasonable. Certainly the room revenue has been verified. So we used $8,520,359, again referring to page 6 of my brief. We stabilized the departmental expenses, totaling $3,605,051. We also stabilized the undistributed expenses, as you see there, totaling $3,668,425. Management fees are standard at 4% for a hotel, and FF&E reserve is standard at 3%. We're in agreement with the agent on that. From that, we deduct fixed expenses totaling $226,019 to come up with a net operating income of $1,020,864. Capitalize that at 9%. There's the 15% FF&E deduction for a total value of $9,641,000. On page 7 is a summary of what's typically an A&G. In this case, even in 15, the A&G, we didn't have a breakdown of it, so we just lump summed it there. And then we reconcile the net income from the statement we receive, adding back expenses such as depreciation and amortization, which aren't an allowable deduction for assessment purposes. Turning to page 8, we have some photographs of the hotel. At the top is an overhead view of the Holiday Inn. Page 9, another street view, and then there's the main lobby at the bottom of the page. Looks like taken in April of 17, and I guess that's when we inspected it. Doug was April of 17. Some shots of the lobby and the lounge and some of the rooms, which have been complete at that point through page 11. 12 shows that there are some VLTs on the site. And 13 is a little coffee lounge there. There's underground parking at the site, also a swimming pool shown on page 14 and 15. Those of you with grandkids might be familiar with the play area there. And there's some banquet space there and also a fitness facility on page 16. So I won't go through all the details, the features of the Holiday Inn. They're laid out for you on pages 18, 19, 20, 21. It's a very modern hotel with everything you would expect in a typical Holiday Inn. The banquet space is laid out in different configurations, and that's shown on page 23. So towards the back here, I have some of the permits taken out for the work. And then let's turn to page 39 of my brief, if you will. So this is an article that was written and posted in the Winnipeg Free Press. And the title of the article is Hotel Up Their Game, $10 million Holiday Inn reno nears completion. So this was in January of 17, and the renovation was nearly complete. They note that it was a 2.5-year rental project, and they expected it to be complete in about 3 months. It involves stripping the 228 guest rooms down to the bare studs, completely redoing them. Essentially, brand new hotel. The lobby, lounge, and banquet rooms have also been extensively remodeled, and the restaurant will be getting a makeover beginning next month, being February of 17. So the restaurant reno was one of the last things to be done, and we would anticipate upon completion that revenue would ramp up. Turning to page 40, the manager, Mr. Mackay, notes things that went into the renovations: new washrooms, electrical systems, internet connections, interactive televisions, 16 junior suites, which are larger than the regular suites, were created. I think those are the key points of the article. Essentially, a brand new hotel, $10 million were put into this property on top of the existing value. So given the extent of the renovations, given that at the end of fiscal 17, October 17, the hotel was just beginning to ramp up, we believe that $9,641,000 is a reasonable assessed value as of the reference date. We believe the hotel will continue to improve and attract customers back once they see what the hotel has to offer. So I would ask the panel then to confirm our assessed value for 2020 at $9,641,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, do you have anywhere your evidence, those income tax forms that show,
I have them with me. I didn't include it in my evidence.
do you use that on any of the other hotels?
Well, in a case like this where we didn't have the info, we use that as a source to see what the actual revenues were going to be, just to verify our projection.
And how do you get that information?
Well, that's
Is that-
submitted
is that
by
not-
every hotel to the city, and we have access to it.
So that's not personal information?
No?
No? You use that, so if they would have supplied their information that I supplied you today, you wouldn't have looked at those?
Or we wouldn't have needed to. We wanted to verify our projection and make sure it was in line, and that's basically what we used it for.
Okay, just a couple of questions then.
Yes.
On page 6, you've estimated the food to go up to $2,000,001,
Yes.
telephone to 550,000, and then other 167,000. So you and I are basically about 700,000, no, I guess we're closer, yeah, about $700,000 difference. And out of that, roughly 400 is for the rooms. The expenses now, for the telephone, when have you ever seen a telephone make income in a hotel. Like you show on page 6, you show that when they submitted in 2015,
Right,
their telephone revenue was $1,942, their expenses was $95,000.
right.
For this one, you've used $2,550 as income, and for expenses, you use $1,942.
Sure.
Very light on that one, correct?
Yep,
Because it, like, well, in mine, I'm showing you actuals, you didn't have them, but it was actually 58,000. So we're pretty light on that one, correct?
correct.
And then your insurance, you used 86. With all the money that they put in there, et cetera, do you think their insurance costs would go up? You got a much more valuable asset to,
Quite possibly. I mean, the insurance typically we see is 1% of the revenue, so that was our guideline there. Most of the hotels we look at, insurance comes in around 1% of the total revenue. So, based on the revenue, we think it's reasonable.
okay. I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, because they put $10 million in it, that doesn't mean that people are gonna automatically start going back there, correct?
Well, that's certainly the hope of the owners, that they would attract.
Or at least try to maintain what they used to have, correct?
Correct.
Because the Grand opened up at the airport, correct? And then the Greenwood Inn changed to a Best Western Plus.
Yes.
And then we had the Mainstay and the Days Inn and all those open up. And all
Yes.
the ones on St. Matthews,
Yes.
the Marriotts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So while this is under construction, people are gonna leave, right? They're not
Yeah.
gonna go there and they're gonna end up going to these other hotels.
Clearly, yes.
I see you haven't dropped the room rate. Well, the room rate's 126. That's still high, is it not?
Well, we would assume with a brand new hotel essentially that fully modernized, they would be able to at least charge what they were.
But if the hotels that are newer, no, meanwhile not renovated, but similar, that are closer to the airport are getting less than that, why would they assume that they would?
Well, some are getting more than that. I mean, it's a reasonable projection and it seems to pan out with what they're actually receiving. So we don't think it's off base.
Okay, the room tax that they pay,
Yeah.
they pay that to the city, but they don't, and they have to pay GST on that as well? They pay GST on the rooms, et cetera, do they get any of that back?
Well, accommodation tax is, it's based on the total number of rooms and the total revenue and a certain percentage of that. I believe it's 5% of the total revenue,
Even
and it doesn't appear that there's GST on that.
Okay,
So it's 5% of their total room revenue.
okay, I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Stan, do you have any questions of the assessor?
The only one I have, and I don't know which who's gonna answer that, the VLT revenue, you're not showing any.
I'm thinking it's probably in the other category. We usually show it down at the bottom, but it's a very minor part of the total here, and I'm thinking that it's in the other revenue here.
Well, you say it's, anyways, but
We just kept it in line with what it was prior.
so they've got on the appellants, it's 134,000. If they says VLT income and you don't have any,
VLT income 134, so that would be their actual for 17.
their actual,
Their actual for 17 that we didn't have that information, so perhaps we're a little bit high on the VLTs.
you think it's in there somewhere?
Well, it would be in the other, not separated out in our 2015, so.
Oh, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Stan, do you have a question?
No questions.
So basically, because you didn't receive information from the applicant, you had to resort to try to determine yourself what
Yes,
you
you had
thought
to
the property would be operating as in 2018?
Yes,
And you assumed then that there would be better occupancy because the renovations had been finished by then?
yes.
And there's some questions along those lines, but basically, it is just an estimate, and now that you have the information from the applicants, what we have by today,
Mm.
do you have any reason to revise your projections?
No, because we were able to verify our projection with the accommodation tax returns. As of October 31st, the renovations hadn't been complete for a full year, so it really only reflects maybe half a year of the newly renovated state of the hotel. Given another 6 months, and we can see the monthly returns increasing as we go past October 31st, so our projection looks spot on.
Okay. That's fine, that's my question.
Can I have one follow-up to that, to your question?
You know what, I'm gonna allow that.
Okay, you mentioned it kept going up. Now, is that a busier time of year? Is that the reason it went up?
No, overall, month over month, like comparing,
Okay, in 17, we had the summer games, correct?
I don't recall, but.
Well, we
I'll
did,
take
and it
your
was
word,
like
yeah.
an influx of another, like, I think it was close to 200,000 extra tourists. So that would account for an increase in revenue for
It
2000.
could, yes.
Right, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, you know what, if anybody wants to make a summation, I'll allow that now.
I guess I go first.
Well, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I would just like to say that, again, you could spend $10 million, but you had 2 years where you were closing floors, people couldn't come. So you lost some clientele. Some may be coming back, but some of the newer hotels that are closer to the airport have put in more family-oriented. The mainstay suites now has suites, it has a nice pool area for the kids. I understand that the assessor was using assumptions because he didn't have the information, but I think based on the information we provided, the assessment should be reduced to $7,819.
Given the extent of the renovations here and the dollar value of it, I wouldn't see the owners being willing sellers at less than 8 million. And that's part of market value, is a willing buyer, willing seller. I think we're close to the mark based on our income workup at 9,641,000. Given that they put 10 million in, we think it's reasonable and should be confirmed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's to decide this one, thank you very much for your submissions. Okay. And the next property is 1999 Wellington Avenue.
Put that on there.
Sure.
And when you're ready, Mr. Henry, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the roll number here is 07-04-218-0100. This is the 4 Points Sheraton at the airport, the address being 1999 Wellington Avenue. The roll year 2020, reference date is April 1st, 2018. And the value in the roll is $13,688,000. Mr. Bedker and I have had some discussions on this property, and I had made an offer of settlement at $12,949,000. Still open for acceptance.
I'm sorry, didn't get that number, Mr. Henry?
$12,949,000.
Thank you.
Still open, Mr. Bedker?
I spoke to the owners and they asked me to proceed.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll proceed. My recommendation would be to confirm the assessment at $12,688,000. So what I'll do is, I'll go through the income workup and how we derive.
Actually, I think it says 13,688,000.
Yes, 13.
13 million, pardon me, 13,688,000. So we can go directly to my income workup on page 6. Essentially, with this hotel, we have 3 years of stabilized, 3 years of actual income, and we stabilized based on the 2017 actuals. Mr. Bedker and I are apart in A and G. Initially, it was thought that we were apart on energy and water and repair and maintenance. However, we flipped those two lines around mistakenly, so repair and maintenance should be 108,793. Energy and water should be 275,429. There's no net effect on the net income. It's just those two lines were reversed. And the difference between the appellant and I on R&M is found in the rooms department. The hotel allocated some of their R&M directly into rooms. Mr. Bedker took it out and put it in the R&M line where we left it in the rooms expense. So I'll go through my numbers now. So room revenue is $5,537,533. This is actual room revenue. Food and beverage, $1,493,608. $21,437 for VLTs, and other income at $192,821. Total revenue being $7,245,419. Rooms expense is actual. We've used all the actuals from 17 in our departmental expenses. Undistributed expenses, A&G at $676,025, which is our view of the actuals. Marketing, energy and water, R&M, all actuals. Management fee, the standard 4%. Franchise fee, the actual, and FF&E at 3%. Total undistributed expenses are $2,307,241. Business tax, property tax, insurance are all the actual 2017 numbers. Our NOI is $1,368,831. We capitalize that at 8.5%, which is a cap rate we use for airport hotels due to their favorable location next to the airport. And we deduct the standard 15% for non-assessables, FF&E as it were, to derive our value of $13,688,308. I've gone through the applicant's brief, and I can see that where we are apart is on A&G and how we treat certain items. Certain items there the applicant believes should be deductible, and we take the view that they should not be. Specifically, there's deductions for a Manitoba tax, which is a corporate tax, health and education tax it's called, which we don't allow. If we turn to page 8, we'll see the reconciliation of the financials. So we don't allow depreciation and amortization, and the agent agrees with that. Same thing with interest expenses. The land lease is not deductible. This is a fee paid to the WAA. Other leases, we don't allow them as a deduction either. It's a form of financing, and values should be the same whether owned or leased. And one of the differences is the parking lease. Now, the Winnipeg Airport Authority has the airport land under lease from HMQ, Her Majesty the Queen. He is the ultimate owner of the property. They lease all of it to the Winnipeg Airport Authority. The Winnipeg Airport Authority, in turn, leases sections of land to individual occupants. In this case, Lakeview Management Inc. Leases a space for the hotel, which they have built, and also the parking area. Now, when WAA leases areas to an occupant, that area is carved out of WAA's holdings, and it's assessed at a different roll number to the occupant. So the parking space is assessed to 4 points, as is the land the hotel is built on. With regard to the parking lease, for example, we wouldn't allow that as a deductible expense for assessment, because if we did, we would be left with no value to the parking space. And WAA is not assessed for that space either. So it's a form of financing. We treat it as though it's owned by the hotel, and it's a non-allowable deduction. The health and education tax, we don't allow that as a deduction. This is a tax that's assessed to corporations in Manitoba which exceed a payroll of 1.25 million. Lakeview is a fairly large employer in the province, and they're subject to the tax. But this is a corporate payroll tax, such as corporate income tax, and it's not attached to the property per se. If I own this hotel and had the payroll just pertaining to this hotel, I wouldn't be subject to it. The value should be the same, so we don't allow that deduction. So we believe that we've allowed all the applicable deductions in determining property value and disallowed the ones which aren't applicable. So we're about $150,000 apart, the agent and I, on NOI, who the agent believes all of those should be deductions. We're in disagreement on that point. The basis of my recommendation at $12,949,000 was to bridge that gap somewhat and make a further allowance for A and G of $75,000. I'm still going to recommend that the panel accept that value, and I can pass out the valuation to come up with that value, as that's a value I believe would be acceptable. I know the agent has not accepted that on behalf of the owner. But I'd like
But I
to
think the
have-
agent would like us to have it because at least it puts it in a better perspective than the original request, so
Right.
it's not a,
So it's a bit of a reduction from the original value, and the basis of it is adding in $75,000 to A and G, to bridge the gap between the agent and myself in terms of what's allowable. Now, the 8.5% cap rate is another issue between the agent and I. The airport hotels, we view as having a significant advantage, and I think Mr. Becker even referred to the airport hotels in reference to the Holiday Inn and the effect that it has there. I deal with the airport assessment, and the airport is booming. There's a record number of passengers coming through, and I believe the advantage of an airport location for a hotel is obvious. Passengers don't have far to go. They don't have to arrange a cab. They can stay there, and if they're on their way to a connecting flight the next day, they're right at the airport already. Businesses like having meetings there because it's close to the airport. They don't have to worry about transportation. Of note on the 8.5% cap rate also is it's the same cap rate we used for this hotel in 2018 and 2016, and that value was not, that cap rate was not disputed then. We don't believe there's a basis for disputing it now. So back to the specifics of this hotel. If you turn to page 6, you'll see that the occupancy rate of this hotel has reached 86% in 2017, which is one of the top performing hotels in all of the city. It's essentially full capacity for a hotel, and therefore they've achieved a record revenue for themselves. So we believe that their full value for an 8.5% cap rate, we've used their actual financials, save the leasing expenses that I referred to. We bumped A&G to try and come to some agreement here. So I think their full value for $12,949,000, and I would recommend that the panel accept that value as a reasonable valuation for 2020 here.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker, any questions?
Yes. If I turn to your page 6, Mr. Penner,
Yes.
you've included the parking revenue, correct?
Parking revenue.
In your other.
Not sure at the moment what's in there, but
Okay, well,
let's say that it's in there.
your number is exactly the same as mine for total
Yeah.
income, and
Yeah.
I break out the parking.
Yeah,
And you mentioned that the parking, anything that has its own lease is carved out and has its own roll number.
correct.
And so there's 2 leases for this property?
Well, I have the lease here from WAA. It's all shown on one lease. It shows 92 parking stalls, and it shows the land at $19.99.
Now, is that the same land that's assessed to the hotel? Or is
Yes.
that a separate parcel?
No, it's all on one parcel, the parking and the hotel land.
Okay, so this is on the hotel, on the airport, so if it wants to have parking, it has to lease more land.
Yes,
If it doesn't wanna have parking, then it wouldn't pay that extra money, but it wouldn't have any parking revenue either.
right,
The Birchwood is called the Holiday Inn Airport West.
Right.
Considered. They have underground parking
yes,
service
so
parking,
they've leased 92 stalls.
but they don't have to pay anything additional, correct? Because it's all part of their assessment based on the income that they earn.
Who?
Birchwood, or the Holiday Inn
The
that we just
Birchwood?
did. we
Yes,
just did.
yes,
Okay, but for this hotel to have parking revenue, it has to lease more land,
yes,
which is an additional expense.
right.
But
But we
you allow
treat
the
it,
income, but
we
you don't.
treat it as though it's owned by, because we're looking at the fee simple interest, so we, not the leasehold interest. So we treat that parking as though the hotel owns it.
Okay, so if I build a hotel on the airport, I have to consider I either just build it on the footprint of the lease for the hotel,
Yeah.
or I have to lease additional land if I wanna provide parking to my
Yes,
patrons.
yes,
And the Birchwood or the Holiday Inn or the Holiday Inn on Pembina, none of that, they don't have to do that because they already own the land and they have parking available.
right,
But they'd be assessed the same, their parking income would be assessed.
yeah,
But they wouldn't be able to allow any expenses, but any expenses that were accrued with it would get allowed, correct?
well, but the Birchwood would say had to borrow money in way of a mortgage for that land, and we don't allow the mortgage expense
Well, I'm
on.
not saying to allow the expense for the hotel, but I mean, if you're gonna include the parking income and they have to do a separate lease to get the parking, then you either do one or the other. I'm just stating my opinion. I've included the parking income, but I've
Mhm.
also allowed the parking lease, because I think that's additional to the
Right,
hotel.
but lease are only treated the same.
Okay. So you feel that being on the airport is a benefit?
Yes,
Okay, we spoke about the Holiday Inn, this room rate was 126. This one's at 117. I know it has a higher occupancy, but it has a lower income. A lower average room rate compared to the one we just heard.
yes, well,
Okay.
what we projected, yes.
Okay.
So this is actual, this is what
Right.
their actual rates are.
Your capitalization rate study or table that you show on page 3. You've got urban at the very bottom of the table there, you got urban full service. City of Winnipeg 8.5 to 9, Collier 7.5 to 9.25, CBRE 7.5 to 9, and then Cushman Wakefield 8 to 10. How many airport hotels have sold that you're aware of?
Here in Winnipeg?
Yes.
No,
How about anywhere else?
I don't know.
Okay, so where does this premium come from? Is that just the department's idea that because it's on the airport, it should be less risky?
Well, we can see it in how they're performing, the occupancy, and I think it's an advantage of location.
So if you're the International Inn or Victoria Inn, down the street that offers shuttle service, offers parking for if you wanna fly. Same across the street, you got the Hilton, and then you got the Best Western. Those are all considered airport hotels. And they offer
Well,
stay
they're
in.
not directly on the airport site.
Okay, but if
You
you're a
can walk-
family-
You can walk to this,
So you're basically just catering to people that fly in and out of Winnipeg.
well, I mean, I guess that's not the only patrons there, but in our view, it's an advantage.
But you have no market data to show that 8.5, that it should be half a point lower cap rate than the other full-service hotels in Winnipeg.
The market data shows that we're within an acceptable range, and the cap rate is the same as for 18 and 16 on this hotel.
I know, but you don't have any sales to,
No, we don't.
so it's just the opinions department that, the department's opinion that it should have an extra half a point on there.
Yes,
So you take all their income, because it's on the airport, and then you again add an additional premium by deducting half a point off your cap rate.
well, when we speak to other agents and they refer to the airport, they refer to those hotels as having an advantage. And we're reflecting that location is everything for a hotel, and it's our opinion, and
Yeah.
we may disagree.
Yeah, no,
that it's an advantage, worthy of a half a point.
okay, I guess that's it, that's all the questions I
Thank
have.
you. Mr. Any questions to the assessor?
No,
Mr. Magnar?
No, the only question I had was this recommendation, and Mr.
Okay.
Penner answered.
You did, yeah. Okay, my only question is, I'm referring to the city's cap rate study,
Mhm.
and you show 8.5 for a full, urban full service, which is the lowest cap rate we have for hotels. Of all of them, which is what this is this hotel considered urban full service?
Yes.
I do note that, and this is unusual, that actually, the city has a higher cap rate for that than does Colliers or Christian Wakefield or the others, which,
They have a lower.
they have lower cap rates.
Yeah, so a lower
so
cap rate
Yeah.
is possible,
Yeah.
but we're in the middle.
Usually the cities
We're
is-
within the range.
I'm just pointing out loud, because
Yeah.
usually I find the cities is usually more aggressive cap rate than the competitors, in this case it is,
Right.
be that as it may. Okay,
Okay, since
You
it's my
can-
turn, I'd like to talk about the cap rate first.
yep,
If you go to any of the studies here that were done by, that are published by Colliers or CBR, or there's another company called APS, they don't show any airport hotel sales either. So I am not sure where any of these companies get their their cap rates from. And I know the city doesn't have any airport hotel sales, and I'm not even sure if there's any hotel sales since around 2012 that can be relied upon in Winnipeg. The only two that sold then was the Hilton and what was the Greenwood, and they sold for considerably less than what they were assessed for at the time. So that's in the cap rate. If I could ask the board just to turn to page 5.
page 5 of your,
Yes, of mine,
okay,
please.
that's fine.
Yes. Now, Mr. Penner showed you his workup, and it shows 15, 16, 17, and then a stabilized. I have the same, similar on page 9 of mine, where I've done exactly what Mr. Penner's done. But on page 5, I've listed where we're different.
Mhm.
So, in the income, my income is a bit higher, roughly $100,000 more. My net income, sorry, our actual income, which includes parking and everything else, is $7,245,414, the same as Mr. Penner. Our total department expenses, mine are slightly higher than Mr. Penner's. A&G, I've used the actual, I'm not sure where Mr. Penner's came from. I don't remember that being brought up. Again, now, see, I'm comparing to your original, and then you have an offer on the table that's different. So, I think I'll just cut to the chase. The numbers that I've shown you on page 5, those are based on their actual performance. And I feel that my net income of $1,213,797 is fair, and these hotels are competing with all the hotels, whether they're on the airport or just off-site the airport. And I've checked all the other or the full-service hotels, and the majority, I'm not sure about the Westin downtown, I'm not sure what that one has, but 9% is the cap rate that's been used on these types of hotels. And whether we can't deduct the land lease, et cetera, I still think there is encumbrances when you're on property where you don't own the land. If you want additional parking, you have to be able to lease it from the airport. If they don't have it, you don't get it. If you're a company like the Holiday Inn on Portage, you have underground and surface. So if you're attracting a family that's driving, you're gonna go to, say, the Holiday Inn where they have a nice pool area and lots of parking. And the parking is free. If you go to the airport, you're gonna have to pay for your parking. There's additional costs associated with it. And I just think that 9% would be fair for the subject property. It wasn't brought up in previous years, but I've been talking to the owners. There's only 2 owners of hotels at the airport. There's the person that owns the Marriott Courtyard, and then there's the Lakeview group that owns the Grand and the Four Points. And based on the information I got from them, and talking to them, I feel that a 9% cap rate is fair, and I asked the board to reduce the assessment to $11,464,000. All my evidence is very similar to Mr. Penner's. All my income statements are shown and where I got the numbers from, and I'm open for question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Penner.
I have no questions.
Just
So,
on the cap rate, these charts that we get like from Claire's and all that,
Yes.
and you said you don't know where they're getting them from. Is that
Well,
what you said?
what I'm saying is I'm unaware of any hotel, airport hotels that have sold that would be in any of those studies. Like, for instance, the city there hasn't been an airport hotel sale in Winnipeg. There's hotels that call themselves airport, like the Hilton Airport or whatever, that have sold, that are off-site, but there hasn't been an actual sale of a hotel on the site. And you gotta remember too, when you have a lease with the airport, it's got an expiry date, and when it expires, the building reverts to the airport. So whether it's fee simple or not, if I'm the owner of a hotel and I'm gonna give it back to the airport in 5 years, I'm not gonna maintain it, and I don't care because it's gone, it's not my building anymore. So that's part of the leases, you have to either remove the building or it can revert to the hotel, to the airport.
But you do have to establish some reason to come up with 9%, as the city has to come up with 8.5.
I'm just saying that based on all the other hotels, the similar hotels in the city, 9% should be fair. It's competing with the other full-service hotels that are at 9%.
But let me be more specific, you have hotels that are at 8.5%.
This is the only ones I have at 8.5 are on the airport, the Grand and the Four Points. The other one that's on the airport is limited service, so it has a different cap rate as well.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah.
Ms. Bender.
Are there any sales exclusive of the airport area of hotels that have occurred in the last couple of years?
As far as I know, it's just the Hilton and what was the Greenwood, the Best Western. There was a sale on the Holiday Inn on Pembina, it was a half-interest sale. That's about all I know.
All right, that's it.
Okay, so you basically were referring to the fact that there's a lease and eventually they're gonna have to just leave and the building's gonna revert to the ownership of the lessor. How long is that lease for?
I think it's 40 years.
40 years, and is there a renewal?
I think there is a renewal of 20.
Yeah, so, and does that right where you have further rights? I know that these type of leases usually go on for a long time because nobody would put an investment into
Yeah.
a property. And usually the lease is just for control, not necessarily for ownership.
Yeah, as far as I know, the original was 40, and I think there's an option to extend it for another 20. And, like, I used to work on the airport properties as well, and I used to create the land rates for the airport, for their leased land. They would hire me to do that. And I know in some cases where the building was now at the end of its lease,
Right.
it was reverting to the airport, but the owner still wanted to occupy the building, so then I had to come up with a market rent that the airport would charge the owner to stay there. So the ownership does revert, it stays, but
Yeah, but it's gonna be negotiable again in 60 years, and probably 60 years might even be the economic life of the building to begin with anyway.
yeah, and like even the big the Air Canada hangar is on a land lease out there. Now, if that one, at the end of its lease, nobody's gonna want it, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, so there's different.
Yeah, there's different factors. So I'm looking actually also at the city's cap rate study, and the best hotel, according to them, would have a cap rate of 8.5. And would you say that this hotel doesn't reach that category of bestness? Which might not be a word, but.
I guess, I'm not sure how to, like, to me, the best hotel probably in Winnipeg is the Westin. It seems to be the highest class one. And then next to this one, like, down the street, you got the Victoria Inn, which has had a lot of renovations. They now have that huge banquet facility, which has definitely helped their occupancy level and their room rates. Would it be the best? I don't think it would be any better than a renovated Holiday Inn or the Hilton.
Okay, that's a fair comment. Now, I also noticed that Colliers had a 7.75% best cap rate for
Yeah.
hotels. With hotels not selling, how did they get that?
There's probably from the Ontario market. If you look at HVS reports that come out of Vancouver, and they have hotel sales per province,
Uh-huh.
there's usually 2 or 3 for Manitoba, and a lot of them are rural.
Okay, so they might not pertain to Manitoba at all then? Okay, that's fair. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I just comment on that? Where do they get that?
Well, I'm gonna allow summation, so you can do that in that manner if you would.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so summation, and do you wanna go first this time since Mr.?
Yes, I certainly
yeah.
will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, With the airport property, all the airport property is on a lease, which, if the lease is close to expiry, it does present an issue of risk. However, the City of Winnipeg Assessment Department, we are assessing the fee simple interest in the property and not the leasehold interest. So, we're assessing the full bundle of rights unencumbered as though fully owned, and that's what we're doing here. If we're to just assess a sliver of it, the leasehold interest, then that would imply part of the value goes to WAA.
Right. Okay, well, I understand that because you're looking at basically income and how it's producing. And
Right.
whether the lease expires next year or 5 years from now, it's not gonna affect the income on a yearly
Right,
basis.
so having said that, it's the full bundle of rights, the fee simple interest, and we don't allow the lease expenses, as we don't allow mortgage expenses
Right.
for properties
I
that
understand.
are owned. The 7.75% cap rate, where there's no sales, Colliers and others will canvass investors' expectations on return
I see.
and risk. So, that might be certain investors, if they were to buy a hotel, they would consider that an acceptable cap
So you're
rate.
saying there might be, if that's the way it's done, you're saying there might be willing purchasers out there who would
There
buy
might
this
be,
hotel at
but we don't have the
at
evidence.
7.75 cap rate, but that's
Mr.
speculation.
Becker's quite right, we
Yeah.
don't have sales
Of course.
here. So having said that, we believe there is an advantage at the airport. It's showing in the performance of this hotel. 86% occupancy is as good as it gets in the city of Winnipeg at the reference date. Having said that, we're still prepared to adjust our initial assessment to 12
Okay,
million.
thank you. Mr. Baker, any information?
Just a little one. Again, I'm not asking for the lease for the property to be removed. What I'm saying is that being on the airport, there are some encumbrances that you wouldn't have if you were on your own property. And some hotel purchasers may look at that as a deterrent and wouldn't pay at an 8.5 for that one when they can get one similar where they own the land and can do more with it at 9. And I guess one other thing about the performing of the hotel. This hotel in 15 was getting an average daily rate of $131, but their occupancy was only 65%. Now in 18, they're getting 117, they dropped their room rate $14, and they're getting 86% occupancy. So whether it's a grand hotel or not, they're getting a higher occupancy because they've lowered their rates. So they can either be competitive or under the competitors. So it's a nice hotel, I'm not gonna say it's not, but it's a standard Sheraton hotel, and I feel the assessment should be reduced as requested. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Okay, so our next matter on the agenda is 235 Dane Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I proceed?
You can.
Okay, the roll number here is 13-06-002-1000, 235 Notre Dame Avenue. The value in the roll for 2020 is $407,000. There is an issue on this property, and we're requesting deferral for non-compliance. We've requested information from the owner, and they have not complied. That evidence is found starting on page 11. This is the certified envelope, the tracking details on page 12, and the registered letter that went out in June of 2018, requesting the 2017 information. So on that basis, we're asking for non-compliance penalty and reversal of bonus.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, what do you have to say about that?
I spoke to the owners, they did not send in their expenses. The building's been vacant and derelict for, I don't know, at least a decade or so. And they didn't think, because of the fact that it's, like even the power stuff is shut off, that they would even have to comply, so that's why they didn't.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
Okay, I think that, any questions, Mr.
You say it's vacant?
Yes, this is the old St. Charles Hotel.
Yeah, I know it, but I thought there was something going on there, but maybe I'm wrong.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. It's
There
fine.
was some work being done because was it a year or 2 years ago, Mr. Penner, I think it was, that the basement caved in underneath the
Right.
hotel, and it
Yeah,
was
the
underneath,
foundation,
and it was underneath the sidewalk that the city owned, so there was a fight between the city and the owner as to who should fix the sidewalk.
Okay. Fine.
That's the only, I don't really have any, they agreed they did not comply, and
Okay.
that's,
So how long has it been vacant?
oh, I'm not sure. Oh, sorry, 2008.
I don't have any questions, but I think on this one, I think we have to make a consideration. So I'm gonna ask the two fees relief that we're gonna discuss it.
sure.
Okay, well, Mr. Becker, I'm gonna say that, under the circumstances, the property not earning an income, I can see why the owner thought he didn't have to turn it in, but the law says he has to, and reluctantly, we have to make a finding that he did not comply.
Yeah, no, I explained that to him, I just said I explained your circumstances, but the law is the law.
So,
Yeah.
Hopefully he won't do
So I
that
will
again.
start. No, they won't. Okay, if I can ask the board to turn to page 2. I almost got the right dates in, Mr. Benner.
Oh, yeah.
This is the, what was this, A. Charles Hotel at one time. The 235 Notre Dame, the roll number is 13-06002100. Has a gross building area of 39,637, and it's on a parcel of land of 9,232 square feet. Original age is 1913. This is a 2012 assessment based on April 1, 2018 market value. Current 2020 assessment is $407,000, and I'm requesting a 2020 assessment of $10,000. If I could ask the board to turn to page 3. At the top, there's a picture of the site plan of the subject property. The subject property is commonly known as the St. Charles Hotel. The building was constructed in 1913 and consists of 39,637 square feet, over 3 floors plus a basement. Land area is 9,232 square feet, and it's zone C character. The subject is located at the northwest corner of Notre Dame and Albert Street. The subject has a grade 3 historical designation. The property has been vacant since 2008. Interior of the building has been gutted and there are no services in the building. The building is in a dilapidated state, but the owner is unable to demolish it due to the historic designation. I do not have any cost to refurbish the building for its intended use, but I'm sure the cost would be in the millions of dollars and not feasible due to the condition. On the next page, evaluation. One approach to value derelict buildings is to value the land as if vacant less demolition costs. We were only able to find 2 older vacant land sales with C character zoning, plus 2 more recent commercial vacant land sales. Trying to get as close to the subject area as possible. Now, the first one is on 228 King. The land area was 19,181. Now, it's an older sale. It sold in 2013 for $590,000 or $30.76 a square foot. And it's vacant commercial land. The property's still vacant. The next one is at 265 Princess. 16,300, again, it sold in 2013 for $25.26 square foot, and it's zone C character, and it's used for surface parking. The next one is Zero Colony. It's a smaller lot, 6,601 square feet. It's an October 17th sale for $54.84, and its zoning is multifamily, and it's used as a surface parking lot. The next one is at 174 Isabel, just to the west. It's 6,715 square feet. It sold in November of 17 for $34.22 a square foot, and it's commercial multi-use, and right now it's a vacant commercial lot. The older sales are zone C character and in the subject neighborhood. The comparisons are larger, and the subject and the sales are from 13. Sale price per square foot ranges from $25.26 to $30.76. The 2 newer vacant commercial sales have different zoning than the subject and are slightly smaller. The sale price per square foot on these sales range between $34.22 to $54.84. The closest land sale to the subject is on Isabel and sold in November 2017 for $34.22 per square foot. For the purpose of this report, we'll be using a square foot rate of $35 per square foot for the subject lands. Estimated land value at $35 is $323,120. The owners do not have a cost to demolish due to the fact the building is unable to be demolished based on the historic grade currently on the building. I did check our records and we do have a demolition cost estimate for 288 Princess. This is an older, it was built in the 1900s, early 1900s on 288 Princess. It has been demolished. It's where the slow mission is, where they're putting up the new part there. And the cost at that time in 14 was $5.65 per square foot for the demolition costs. Due to inflation, based on $6.50 per square foot, the demolition cost would be $257,640, again, if it was allowed. After removing the demolition cost, the value of the property would be $65,000 rounded. Page 5, under the summary, the current assessment for 2020, based on April 1, 2018, is $407,000. The current assessment is based on the assessor's best estimate of the property as a going concern. Based on valuing the building as if vacant, less the estimated cost of demolition, the value would be $65,000. Due to the fact that the property cannot be demolished and the cost to refurbish is not feasible, we feel the property value should be nominal at $10,000. We respectfully request the board revision to reduce the 2020 assessment on the subject property to $10,000. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Petter, questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Stenning, do you have any questions?
Yeah, it's a historic building, right?
Yes, grade 3.
Has there been any attempt to sell it?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know he's had lots of problems with the city because he wants to change it to different use, but because of its historical designation, he can't.
So I guess the question would be, why would they not try to sell it? I mean, is that a fair question?
It's a fair question, but I don't know what they would ever get. Like it's.
Well, it may establish a value.
It could, but maybe they have, and I honestly don't know if they have tried, but I know it's been a constant fight with the city between the two of them, and I don't know who's right or who's wrong or what their
So
positions are.
you're saying that 10,000 is kind of more of a token?
Just a nominal fee,
Yeah,
yes.
but you're not using the other value of so much a square foot,
The 65,000.
which would give it 323,000.
Well, then I remove the demolition costs if you could demolish it. Because you'd have to take that in consideration. To use that.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So, is there any, I mean, I don't think this is huge here, if you don't mind me saying so,
Yeah.
you know that, but, did they have any idea what it would take to fix that building as a heritage building?
No, they don't. I don't think when they bought it that they intended to redo it as a hotel.
Oh, I see.
I think they may own some other buildings around there and they wanted to build something different there. But-
Okay, that's what I have, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A couple questions. So on page 3, you indicated the interior of the building has been gutted.
Yes,
So in effect, it's partially demolished now.
partially the interior, because I don't have the exact, but I think the exterior of the facade and that is the part that's historically designated. There wasn't much in the inside that, well, I should have brought pictures. It's gutted. And again, the basement caved in underneath the city sidewalk, and that caused some problems down underneath too.
So did you inspect it?
No, we can't go in there. We couldn't go in there. Last time I went there, it had tape around it, so I couldn't go in.
Oh. So the cost you show on page 4 for demolition for 288 Princess, was that a complete demolition? In other words, if the interior was still there and,
It used to be like a warehouse, the old multi-story warehouses. And it was about 4 stories, it was all brick, concrete, stone foundation. And the estimate we got was from Emery Demolition, where the owners got it from Salome, because they wanted to add on to the property. And at that time in 14, it was $565 a square foot. Now it's complete demo and removal, as long as there was no
asbestos?
asbestos or any contamination.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So basically, at $10,000 nominal, you're basically saying, look, it might be half the value, but it's, you can't use it for anything, we can't demolish it, it's basically an albatross on there.
Yes.
So why don't they just give it to the city and say, take it for taxes?
I don't know.
I mean, it has to have some value if they're holding on,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they could easily let it go and then not have that responsibility. So on one hand, they're keeping it and, for whatever reason, which we don't know.
No.
On the other hand, they're saying, just tax us $10,000 and give us a nominal amount. And I think if I was in that position, I could claim that it was everything that you, and I think fairly you're portraying that. So I'm not criticizing it, but I find it hard to fathom with why the applicants held on to it all this time.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay, well, you can't answer that because you're not the applicant, you're just his agent.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll have to determine this when we get back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have one last matter?
No, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Okay, as mentioned, the roll number is 1306-0021-000-235 Notre Dame Avenue. I don't disagree with the agent on his characterization of the property as dilapidated. It's vacant, it's essentially gutted. As he noted on page 5 of his brief, we made an estimate of how a property like this might perform if it was a going concern, and that's shown on page 9, determining a value of $407,000, pardon me, and that's the value that we put in the roll. It's not based on any actual operating, obviously. We have some pictures of the property you can see for yourself, starting on page 8, or page 6, pardon me. Then on page 7, you can see the dilapidated state of the interior. Walls have been torn down to the studs, essentially gutted there. So if we'll just turn to page 18 of my brief. Now this was an article in the Free Press dating back to 2013. And at that point, the city was pretty much set to seize this hotel. And for whatever reason, they opted not to at that point. Cindy Tugwell from the Exchange District states that this is a property that's ripe for redevelopment, and I think that's what Center Venture wants to see done, is that this property be redeveloped. More recently, I think with the foundation problem, the sidewalk caving in was a result of the foundation of the building caving in. There was an order for the owner to remediate that, and as far as I know, the owner hasn't complied and remediated that. I don't pretend to know the details of the dispute with the city and who's responsible for what, but I'm aware of an order that was made for the owner to remediate, and they haven't done so. So, could you say the owner is partly responsible for the dilapidated state? Perhaps you can make that argument. The problem I have with $10,000 nominal value is that hardly covers the cost of administrating the roll, sending out assessment tax notices, and so on and so forth. And with the taxes based on $10,000, there would be no incentive for the owner to do anything. The building will continue to sit there. Last cycle, this property was reduced to $100,000, which I would suggest is probably a more reasonable value for it. So my recommendation would be to reduce the value to $100,000 with the non-compliance penalty fine, as opposed to reducing it to a value that doesn't cover the cost of administrating this property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Baker?
No, I have questions.
Anyone on the board have any questions? Yeah, I don't either. Thank you. Okay. So now we can keep the final matter on, which is 554 Main Street. When you're ready, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The roll number is 1307141900, 554 Main Street, otherwise known as the McLaren Hotel. This is a beverage hotel with a licensed capacity of 204. There are 8 VLTs, and the property hosts 150 rooms. The effective year built of this property was 1915. So we've done an income approach to value on this property, and that's shown on page 6. Our initial workup shown there based on reported 15, 16, and 17 income. We stabilized pretty much with the actuals of 17. Since we did the initial value, I did have a second look at this property, and I would like to recommend a reduced value of $998,000 on it. And that-
900 and,
$998,000.
right,
Now, this is shown on page 19 of my brief, the very last page. So here we have the 17s, and we've made some minor adjustments to the income. We've reduced the income by an amount that's been reported on this roll number for parking. The parking lot is next door on a separate roll number, and the assessment department has taken a different approach with that parking lot than we have historically. Historically, we've deducted that parking lot as we treated this as one economic unit. And we treated it as though it was an amenity of the hotel, necessary parking for the hotel, and deducted it from our value. This property recently went to a municipal board hearing where one of our assessors took a different look at it and realized that the property next door is actually an income-producing parking lot. It's not an amenity of the hotel. Essentially, it's full during the day with parkers paying monthly rates and vacating the parking lot by, say, roughly 5:30 p.m. So based on that, we took out the income that was reported for the parking lot and just did a valuation of the McLaren Hotel. And that's what we have here. So total revenue of $1,400,544. Expenses $945,682. The reported expenses were reported in a lump sum, and we allocated those expenses in a typical manner how they would be allocated. We've divided up into rooms, expense, beverage cost, beverage wages. Obviously, some of what was recorded as beverage cost is actually vendor cost. So we've allocated on that basis. Undistributed expenses at the bottom there, $337,261. We've used the actual 17 taxes for business and property, insurance, and we've added the VLT net income to come up with an NOI of $166,402. So of note, their actual NOI was $204,764. We're using $166,402, which is essentially using 100% of their actuals minus the income attributed to the parking lot next door. We capitalize that using a 15% cap rate. We deduct 10% for FF&E, which is the standard for a beverage hotel, to come up with a value of $998,411. I'll just take you through some pictures. At the top of page 8 in my brief, so right in the middle of the screen is the McLaren Hotel, and just underneath it, that is the parking lot. It's on a different roll number. That's the lot that we used to deduct out, thinking that it was parking for the hotel. As you can see in this photo, there's only one car in that lot. For a hotel with 150 rooms, none of those patrons are using that lot as parking for the hotel. So we're doing that parking lot on an income approach and valuing it separately and not accounting for it here anymore, although we have in the past. So the other picture is just an exterior photo of the McLaren Hotel. So, based on my presentation and my income workup on the last page, essentially we're reflecting fully the income and expenses of the hotel. And based on that, we recommend a value of $998,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, any questions for the assessor?
Okay, so you've been deducting the parking lot forever, correct?
We have.
And for this assessment, you decided not to?
Correct. As I noted, the property went into appeal for a previous year, and based on the assessor involved in his research, he determined that it was an income-producing property and not any longer an amenity of the hotel.
But it's all owned by the same company?
Yes,
And the taxes that you've allowed, are they just for the parking lot or just for the hotel?
just for the hotel.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Mr. Denny, any questions for the
No
assessor?
question.
No.
Mr. Baker? And I don't either.
Okay, I guess the biggest difference, Mr. Chairman, is the difference between, we've used the actual income, but we've also included the value for the parking lot, the income from the parking. So our, like, can I go to Mr. Penn, I'll just do a quick comparison so I can show you where we're different.
That's fair.
If I turn to page 19 of
Okay.
Mr. Penner's, and page 8 of mine. Page 8 of my presentation,
Please.
page 8,
Yes, of yours and the last page of Mr. Denny's.
yes.
Okay,
So on page 8 of mine, you'll see under stabilized, and stabilized is actually the 2017 income and expenses. So on Mr. Penner's, he's got 1,400,544, and I have 1,433,713. The difference is parking. So my income is gonna be, I still have a net income that is, so I have a net income of 136,792. Mr. Penner's without the parking revenue is at 166,402. So we do have differences in our income, and I guess one other thing I'd like to make clear is, we didn't appeal the value of the parking lot because it's never been contested before, it's always been removed from the hotel. And so there would be no sense appealing the parking lot value if you're gonna deduct it from the hotel anyway. So we always treated it as one economic unit. With hotels, the assessor does not put the valuation methodology on the website for the owners to see. For every other property, if you have a restaurant or if you have a strip mall, you have the owner's credentials, you can sign in on the assessments web, and they will show you their income approach, which will show you how much they use for rent, vacancy, cap rates, etc. With hotels, you don't get that. So our department automatically assumed that they would be treating this hotel the same way. Mr. Penner admitted that they've been doing it in the past. I brought, the last several years of the assessor's briefs where they've removed the parking lot. So we're at a bit of a disadvantage because we don't know if the parking lot is assessed fairly now, because we never, we didn't wanna pay the filing fees for that one, knowing that it's gonna be deducted from this one. I think I'm making myself clear. So I just wanna bring that up as a point that we feel a little blindsided on it, that the assessor, now that we do have the valuation, we didn't, that they're now not removing the parking lot. We still think it should be one economic unit, and that it should be removed. So if I could just ask the board to turn back to my page 8, based on using the actual income that's on the hotel, the actual expenses, and I've attached the mailer provided by the assessor, same by the owner, and same with Mr. Penner. You'll see that we followed everything the same way we always have for this hotel, and we're coming up with a value prior to removing the hotel, the parking lot. This is near the bottom of page 8, of $820,752, and from that we removed the parking lot of $426 for a value of $395. It should be noted that the original assessment on this one for 2020 was the $1,140,000, and now they're recommending $998,000. For 2018, the assessment was $786 and it was reduced to $631. So we're basically asking for $370,000 increase on a gallonage hotel on Main Street that gets $8.86 a night for rent. It just doesn't seem reasonable. I don't think, the income hasn't gone up in leaps and bounds like that, and I don't think the value should either. So we asked the board to reduce the value to $395,000. And I might as well make it clear that 14, 16, 18 are all under appeal at the municipal court.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Bennett?
You stated the income hasn't really improved, but turning to page 8 of your brief, see net operating income of 137 for 15, 209, 059, and 17. Would you not say that's a
Yeah, no, it
substantial
hasn't,
increase?
it has had some improvement, yes.
No further questions.
Mr. Steady?
No, I really don't have any.
Mr. McIntyre?
How many stalls are in this parking lot?
I don't know. Do you know, Mr. Penner?
I'm not sure.
Is it managed by like Impark or somebody?
Not that I'm aware of. I think the owners take care of it.
So they manage it themselves?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, no further questions.
Do you ever offers daily parking or is it just monthly parkers?
I never ever checked it out.
Okay. Is it on a separate tax roll?
Yes,
It is. It always has been. It's on a separate title then, I would assume.
as far as I know, yes.
So really, it is a different entity. It's
Well, it always has been a
Yeah,
separate entity.
yeah.
And even if you look at the site plan on page 4 of my report, it shows the hotel as like a U shape, and then it shows the parking lot. And I think after the parking lot is the Royal Bank, and then City Hall.
We haven't seen it, yes. So that U-shape, is that, it's all,
That's the subject.
I know, but is any of it on the hotel property? Like, because I would think it'd be a funny title that would go into a U like that.
No, I think that's just the way they used to build them, so that every room would have windows.
No, I understand, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, who would own the property within the U?
Oh,
Which room
just
that
the
be?
hotel. The hotel.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah,
So a
so,
little, very small part of the parking lot is on the hotel property.
yes. Then the only egress, if you were, would be through
Yeah.
that parking lot.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you. No more questions. So.
Oh, and I guess I just wanted to
Yep.
follow up on Mr. Penner's question that the income did go up. The majority of the income did go up in the food and beverage and the vendor, where your profits are very minor. Vendor profits are usually about 10%, and restaurants are usually, I think, 20%. The room revenue basically stayed, well, I think it went from 865 a night to 885.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I want.
And I have a further question too, but go ahead, Mr. Day.
Okay,
You go ahead, I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
the reserve that you have on line 29,447, what is that?
Again, that's a reserve for replacement of non-accessible items. Of the beds, and I'm not sure if they have TVs, but,
Do you think you can take that as an expense?
yeah. And that expense, that 3% is taken after, only on the rooms and the food. It doesn't include the vendor, which is high dollars, or the VLT. So the 3% is only of that it's no VLT is included in that 3%, and it's the vendor less the cost of sales. So if you make $1 million in your vendor, you're gonna pay roughly $900,000 for the product. So it would be on the 100,000 at 10%.
Do you mind if I ask the assessor if that is commonplace when you do your workup?
The 10% FF?
The reserve?
The
Yes,
three.
3%, yes. 4 for management and 3 for FF.
Okay, fair enough then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I was gonna ask you one further question. So last time you were before our board, it reduced it from you said 7 million something, or 700 and something thousand to 631?
Yes, from 786 to 631.
And you're asking now for us to reduce it even significantly further.
I think the person that took it in for the last board was asking for $1.
Oh, well.
So
Okay, so your expectations have diminished.
I always do mine just based on the actual income. I think there's a 5-day hearing on it right now, and I think we're asking for $1, and the assessment department's asking for an increase, so I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that completes matters?
Right, just a summary,
Okay.
Mr. Vector is correct, there was recently a 4-day hearing with summation yet to come on this property, and dealing with that hearing was the parking lot issue, where it wasn't, the assessment department's position is it was not to be deducted. So pending that result, will give us direction on how to move forward.
Absolutely.
I do understand Mr. Bedford feeling somewhat blindsided, but another agent within Altus would have been aware that the city was changing their approach on that parking lot and perhaps didn't share the information with Mr. Bedker. Having said that, we believe our value is sound and based on the actuals, I think it should be confirmed.
Okay. And Mr. Baker, since Mr. Baker had an opportunity of summarizing, if you wish to do so, I'll let you do so as well.
No, I think I'm fine. I think I
Okay.
said all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don.